Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So we're gonna go ahead and jump right into it. This is going to be my June reading wrap up. I know it's super late, but better late than never. I can't remember how many books I read. I think I was like right at 10, maybe a little under that. But yeah, like I said, let's just go ahead and jump into it. And I do have my phone because I have the ratings on Goodreads and it gives me like the exact dates, unlike Fable, which usually just tells me like, oh, you read this 3 weeks ago. So yes, the very first book that I finished in June was the Love Simulation by Etta Easton. The book that I read before this was The Kiss Countdown. I think I like that one a little bit more than I like this one, but this one was still really cutesy. It was black love and the situation was a little interesting between the two main characters. So the female main character is the assistant principal at a middle school, and then the guy is a teacher in the middle school. It was like a little chaotic from jump, I will say that, but it was a really interesting story. I do love that it also took place in Houston. They have on spacesuits, but neither one of them are astronauts. They went through an actual simulation where they both ended up falling in love with each other, but there was already like some interest peaked before the simulation. And if you guys haven't read this, I'm not going to give you guys too much, but just know that there was some passion, there was some tension. At one point the female main character thought the male main character was like trying to push her out of her job so that he could take it, but it was based on some of the actions of his dad. I will say it was a fairly quick read, and I do recommend. I did give it 3 stars because again, I feel like the first book that she wrote, The Kiss Countdown, was a little bit more interesting, but a 3-star out of 5-star rating is not bad. That's actually more than halfway through, and I will pick up anything else that Etta Easton writes. The next book that I read, I got an advanced reader copy via NetGalley, and it was The Fellowship of Librarians and Dragons. It's the second book in the Edenshire series. I have not read the first one, but this was the first like cozy fantasy that was not YA that I read, and it had dragons and a cute cafe, and the 2 main characters were adorable, which makes me want to check out more of Jay Penner's books. I do want to get the first book, the third book, and I want to say there's 4 books in this series, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is truly like fall vibes in a book, and it was exactly what I was looking for. I gave it 4 stars and I finished it in a day. That's how cute that this was. All right, the next book that I read, and I want to say I gave it 3 stars. Again, not a bad rating, but I was slightly confused at time, and I did do immersive reading with this, but there was several times where I had to go back and like reread or re-listen to what was said, and that was Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. And I had high hopes for this book. It was one of those really, I'm not gonna say highly anticipated, but it was an anticipated read for me for this year. But I feel like this book was severely overhyped, or I'm not the intended audience for this book. Y'all know I get down with the rom-coms and the historical fictions and the fantasy books. So it was sad based on just the telling of it, but it was a lot of weaving in and out of timelines, and I usually love that. I really do love that. I love a then and now timeline so that you really get that buildup. I just don't like the way that this was executed in this particular book, and I feel like I'm the person who falls into the minority of that category because a lot of people really like this book. I just don't think it was my cup of tea. Now again, I did not give it a super low rating because this usually isn't the type of book that I go for. I do like the then and now timeline. I just was slightly confused. It felt like what is that movie called? It felt like reading Napoleon Dynamite or The Pineapple Express. I feel like a very niche audience will know exactly what I mean when I say that, but this was kind of like, it was giving me like brain fog. I don't know. This was not for me. Okay. But again, 3 stars. I like the then and now timeline. It was very sad, very heartbreaking. If you guys have read it, you already know what happened in the book. I'm not going to spoil it. I just know it wasn't for me. I probably won't pick up anything else by her. Now, the next 2 books that I read, and these are by 2 authors who really pull at my heartstrings. The very first, and I gave it 5 stars, was The Women by Kristen Hanna. I'm going to say this, and I should have been prepared after watching people cry while reading her books or reviewing her books. Kristen Hanna writes the most heartbreaking historical fiction books I've ever read in my life. And I love that every book is centered around women. Not just the women, but the Nightingale, the women, what was the other book I read? The Four Winds. I have The Great Alone on hold right now. But her books, oh my God. And this one really hit home for me because for those of you who do not know, I am a flight medic in the United States Air Force. I will actually be getting out in the next couple of months here. And this book hit on like Army nurses, and they were in the 36, what was it, like division. My unit that I'm attached to as a flight medic is the 36. So it was like, there were moments where I was just like, yep, bring the tissues, we're about to cry it out. It was crazy. She really does a fantastic job with her research as well. I don't know if you guys have read like her author notes or her acknowledgments or just like listen to any interviews by her before or after reading her books, but she really does go all in and make sure she is hitting the nail on the head. Now, historical fiction books, we all know some of the character names may be changed or locations or the dates may be slightly skewed, so that way it's not written as if it's supposed to be a history book that is misconstrued, even though with the political climate today, we all know what's going on. All that to say that Kristen Hanna does really good research. I read this book in a day. I was actually going to base to start to like wrap some things up so I can transition out, and I was not okay. I was not okay. I listened to it on the way to the airport, throughout the airport, on the plane ride, when my flight finally landed, then driving to base. I was just not okay, but I was so enthralled that I could not stop listening to the book. Again, I gave it 5 stars. I could be biased. I could be, because I do have some military background. A lot of her stuff hits on like things that happened like a while ago, but have some aspect of like politics or the military thrown in there, and I'm a military girly. I find this, I already know they're gonna be heartbreaking. I do know they are. Like The Nightingale had me crying. I know her books are gonna be heartbreaking, but I just can't put them down. I can't. I would love to see some of her books adapted into like movies, because I feel like they would be phenomenal. I loved it. But if you guys are going to pick up any Kristen Hanna books, just have that little packet of tissues with you, because you will be crying. She does, and they're beautifully written too. Her books are so well written, and I think that goes into the research that she does. So kudos to Kristen Hanna. I do love her books. Cannot wait to either read The Great Alone. Already know I'm going to be boo-hooing, so we'll get into that. The next book is by another author that I really like, who kind of like she does like mess really well, like mess for rich people really well. And a lot of her books, if not all, the backdrop for them is going to be Nantucket or Martha's Vineyard. I read The Summer of '69, again another book that kind of stems into like a lot of the story pulling from the military, or that time when people were really like, they didn't have a choice, they had to go. You were drafted, you were going. But the family drama, and I wrote this in my actual review on Goodreads. I put, there was so much family drama and I absolutely ate it up. I love to read about it, hate to live it. Ellen Hildebrand writes the best summer books with wide character range. 10 out of 10 would recommend. And I finished this in a day, and I gave it 4 stars out of 5 stars. I love the way that she writes, and you get so many different POVs, and normally I don't like that, or I should say I don't like that in a particular setting. In these kind of books that she writes, it's totally fine because she gives you like the whole background of the character. You do get to see some growth, and then you get to see everybody come together beautifully if they don't die. If you've read Ellen Hildebrand's books, you already know what I'm talking about. She is another author who takes care to really pull from her lived experiences, and then a lot of her stuff does hit on some historical fiction as well, because again, it was the summer of '69. Anybody who lived through that time period or they've studied that time period, you already know what happened there. She, along with Kristen Hanna, they do research very well and then turn it into a very enthralling story. So again, Ellen Hildebrand's books, I've seen her books in like Books A Million and Barnes and Noble in like those discounted piles, and I was just like, this seems like something like, you know, my grandmother would pick up. Wrong. I love her books as well. I do not physically own a copy of any of Ellen Hildebrand's books, but that is going to change really soon because I would really love to get my hands on every copy of the books that I've read by her so far. And if you guys have been watching this channel since its inception, you already know that's a good chunk of her books. But Ellen Hildebrand is another author I would 10 out of 10 recommend. She does really phenomenal books. The next book, it was another book. I got it through the Hoopla app. It was an audiobook. It was Next of Kin. I do already have 2 of Kristen Hanna's books. I have Out on a Limb and Out of the Woods. And then I did want to read her other series. I gave this book 3.75 out of 5 stars because it was kind of forced proximity and then found family. I do love a good found family. I do. I really do. But the story of the 2 main characters was extremely heartbreaking. The female main character had to take custody of her baby sister, and the whole background behind that, like the situation of why that happened, was very heartbreaking. And then the male main character, he took custody of his little brother, and his little brother is actually deaf, but he was a very well-written character into the book. And it was just sad. Like, they were in the foster system. They couldn't live like a normal teen to new adult like life, young adult, new adult life. And they had to grow up really fast. And being the oldest of 5, I really do understand that. I've never taken custody of my siblings, but for a good chunk of their lives, I was like their main person, like cooking their meals, making sure they took a bath, making sure they did their homework, making sure they, you know, got to school, got back home safely, that kind of thing. So this hit close to home for me in certain aspects. But I do feel like the characters, it really went from like, I'm not going to say 0 to 100 real quick because it did take them a while to kind of like fall for each other, but it did go by a little bit faster than if these 2 individuals were not living together. But it was an enjoyable read, and I am going to read her next book in the Next Of series. So yeah, 3.75 out of 5 stars for that read. The next book that I read, another Kristen Hanna book, it was The Nightingale. And it did take me 2 days to read this because it is a little bit thicker than the other books. And I did have to put this one down because this one takes place in France. But this was also when Germany occupied France and they were taking all the Jewish people and throwing them in concentration camps. Particularly the one in Auschwitz. And if you guys have studied any part of that history, you really know it. You know how heartbreaking that is. Like, to listen to this story being told from, I want to say there were like 4 or 5 perspectives, but you could really keep up with it. There were at least 3 points in this book where I was crying like a baby. So just be prepared. Again, I gave it 5 stars. It took me 2 days to read because there was a point where I did have to put it down just to collect myself. But again, it was beautifully written, well researched, just a phenomenal read. But if you guys are like ready to be in sad girl season and you want to cry and you just want a book that pulls all the emotion out of you, go pick up a Kristen Hanna book. Guaranteed 10 out of 10 will make you cry. I'm not going to say more on that. Just know that that was probably the most heartbreaking story of hers that I've read to date. And again, I've read The Four Winds and The Women along with The Nightingale. So I don't know if there's anything that's gonna top that, but that one, it just pulled it all out of me. It did. The next book that I read, well, listened to, and I'm gonna go ahead and push these two together because they are by the same author, and I did kind of read them back to back. I read Tom Lake, and then I read The Dutch House. The only reason why I read these two books or listened to them, whatever. Tom Lake is narrated by Meryl Streep, and The Dutch House is narrated by Tom Hanks. That's all. Those were the only two reasons that I picked them up. I love Meryl Streep's acting, and Tom Hanks will forever be known as Forrest Gump and Woody from Toy Story. Okay, I don't care. I know the man has been in several other movies, but those are the two characters that I will always associate him with. There is no in between for me. He's either Forrest Gump or he's Woody. That's it. But listening to their voices, like actually taking the time to really like read verbatim, not missing or making up any words, it was interesting. I did give both books 3 stars out of 5, and again, the only reason why I read them was because of who narrated them. I will say they were okay. Tom Lake is very overhyped. It is a good book, do not get me wrong. But aside from who is narrating it and the way that the story was told, because it does have a then and now timeline, kind of like The Dutch House does just a little bit, I didn't get anything super remarkable from it. Again, not a bad book. None of them are bad stories. It is, I think, an acquired taste. And it does hit on some very heavy topics, both books. And I enjoyed it. The female main character, she is now in her 50s or 60s. She's telling her life story to her daughters, and you get the POVs from when they interrupt, and she kind of jumps in and tries to correct them. You have one daughter who's actually like, she's piecing it together and figuring it out before her other sisters. And then in The Dutch House, the two main characters are the brother and the sister who actually live in the Dutch house. And the brother has a very interesting story. I thought I was gonna like the sister a lot more in that book, but the brother had the most interesting story throughout. So if you guys love when famous people narrate books, pick it up. But other than that, 3 stars for both. They were just okay. The next book I actually did read in between reading Tom Lake and The Dutch House, because I just couldn't do them like super back to back. I did need a little bit of break in between, and that is Swept Away by Beth O'Leary. This is probably the last physical book that I have for the month of June, because everything else is like an audiobook or an e-arc. But I did read this. This is nothing like her other stories, and her backlist is in here. I'm gonna go ahead and access it. Again, Beth O'Leary has written The Flat Share, The Switch, The Road Trip, The No-Show, The Wake Up Call, and then Swept Away. This was very different from her other books because this was more messy. I do not want to spoil anything, but the plot twist in this book, I gave it 3 stars out of 5 because I did not see it coming. But this is not my favorite book of hers. I think I like the, oh my God, what's my favorite book of hers? And I need to get more of her physical books. I like The Switch and The Road Trip so much more. That is like my favorite book out of all the books she's written. This, towards the end, was so messy, but it was like, it gave me a little bit of heart palpitations because I didn't realize this little blurb right here. It says, lost at sea with your one-night stand. I assumed, because this is a houseboat, it is a houseboat, but it was not meant to be like sailed out in the ocean. And they really got lost at sea. I really need to start reading the synopses on the back of the books, because I was like, the whole book, I was like, what the fuck is going on? What is going on? And they were not lost at sea for like, you know, 1 or 2 days. They were lost at sea for like 2 weeks. And it was traumatic for both characters because the guy ended up getting injured. The girl ended up getting sick. It was a lot. And then I thought the story was going to end with them being saved. Oh my God, that is not how it ended. Again, the plot twist in this, I did not see it coming. Y'all, if you have not picked up a Beth O'Leary book, none of them are interconnected standalones, by the way. They all stand by themselves. Pick this one up first and tell me what you think. This was one of my anticipated new releases for the year, and y'all, interesting. Beyond interesting. Again, I gave it 3 stars out of 5 stars. That plot twist did save it, because I was definitely gonna give it 2.75 and just leave it at that. But wow, if you like drama, you'll like it. And then I just have 2 more books for this month, and then I'm gonna go ahead and wrap up this wrap up. I did get another e-arc, and it was Love and Lattes at Pumpkin Hollow. And I don't know what it is, but right around like July, I'm gonna say mid-June, start of July, because if you guys live anywhere in the South where hurricanes are prevalent, I am just itching for fall, winter weather. And I live in Texas, so we don't get true winter until about January. So some Christmases can be unseasonably warm. So Love and Lattes at Pumpkin Hollow was a very cute fall read. The female main character and her father live on a farm, and they are known for like these big birch trees, and she starts this whole pumpkin patch business to try to save it, because again, I guess it's getting to that point where people aren't like super hyped to like go to a farm and do like apple picking or like take the fall photos or, you know, whatever. So she comes up with this idea to save the farm by creating a pumpkin patch for the fall season, but she comes up with this idea when it's like end of August, start of September. She ends up pulling it off, but y'all, it was a lot to go through. I'm not gonna spoil it too much, because again, it was an e-arc via NetGalley. I do appreciate them. I did give it 3.75 out of 5 stars, because the description of the town, outside of just how the farm was described, was so picturesque. Like I could see it playing out in my mind. It reminded me of a Hallmark movie. And of course you get this guy, it could have been a Hallmark movie. I feel like it was plucked from a Hallmark movie, and I usually do not mind those, because it really does like put me in that headspace, because I had no idea summer ween was a thing. And I don't know if it's just me being out of touch with everything or what, but this definitely gave Hallmark movie, because it was a very cute story. Again, 3.75 out of 5 stars. I am really trying to get myself in that headspace to get ready for fall season, and you can't tell me any different, okay? And that's all I'm gonna say. The very last book that I read for June, I was gonna say July, Jesus, June, and it took me 9 days to read it. And that was just because I had a lot going on within that last little time span of June, getting prepared for my new job, or new career, I should say, and making sure those things were okay. But all that to say, I gave it 4 stars out of 5 stars. This was Fable, and I realize a lot of people have been pronouncing this incorrectly. The author herself calls it Fable. It's not Babel. It's Fable. And again, R.F. Kuang. If you've read one book by R.F. Kuang, you already know how she gets down, okay? This book, I thought it was gonna be like dark academia. It was dark. Don't get me wrong, there were moments where it was dark, but it took a complete left turn. This kind of hit on dark academia, historical fiction, fantasy-esque type things. And for those of you who don't know, Fable is at Oxford, across the pond in the UK. But R.F. Kuang writes about racism and inequality and injustice and just overall heartbreak and death in a very, very nuanced way. And it all comes together beautifully. I did not expect to, I'm not gonna say enjoy, because R.F. Kuang's books always pull some kind of strong emotion out of me, and that's what I need in my books. If it pulls strong emotion out of me, it did what it was supposed to do. But this put a whole new spin on how white scholars view non-white scholars. And she had an Asian character, she had an Indian character, she had a black character, and then she had a white character. And I guess she did her research really, really well here too, because the way each character was portrayed, honestly, it felt like she plucked 4 people from this timeline and put them into an Ivy League school and gave them all the same opportunity. But we all know, everybody, if you are not palm colored, you do not have the same 24 hours in a day. Okay? There are some people who have a huge advantage, huge leg up, and that was true for the female main character who was white versus the 2 Asian guys and the 1 black chick. Yes, they all started at the same point, but they did not have the same experiences. And if you guys have read Fable, you understand where I'm coming from, okay? This was right book, right time. I have no notes. I am still flabbergasted, and I am so ready to read the Poppy War trilogy. Y'all don't even understand, okay? And I'm gonna stop it right there because I can completely keep going off on a tangent, and it's not necessary. I had a very good reading month for the month of June. I do feel like I picked up more e-arcs and audiobooks than I did physical books. Again, I only picked up 3 actual physical books. Everything else was read to me, okay? I got extremely, I'm not gonna say lazy because there were other things that I was doing preparing for my new career that took precedence over it, but I will say I haven't touched as many physical books in the month of July either. So that's gonna be a very interesting wrap up. But you guys, please interact with the video, like, comment, share, subscribe. It is free. I do see a lot of my engagement comes from non-followers. So you guys, if you do like the videos, if there's something in particular that you would like to see, please leave it in the comment section below. I am so happy to be back filming. I cannot wait to see you guys in my next video. It's either gonna be a something or other chooses my August TBR, or it's gonna be my series tracker video, okay? I'm gonna try to switch up my background, probably not in the next video, but I will try to get you guys away from the bookshelves. This is just, I love this area. This is super cozy for me. But again, like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye.